Hey guys, it's Ornlu, and we are back with another tier list. Now, I know some of you might be looking for my 1v1 Arabia or maybe even Arena tier list updates, and those will happen, but I kind of want to hold out another week or two because I just want to see the balance changes play out a little bit more. But that will be coming in the future, but this time we're going to be doing something a little bit different. DE has been out for a little over a year now, and we are getting towards the end of the year. It's actually December 1st when I'm recording this, and I'm going to do a sort of state of the civilizations tier list. So we're going to go through all the civs in the game and just see how well they work overall. And this is less about like, oh, which civs are the best, which are the worst, and it's more of how do they work in terms of design? Are they powerful in some situations and weak in others? Are they unique feeling? Do they have any sort of overpowered or underpowered aspect to them? Does like one of their bonuses or unique techs or something feel really weird? And just sort of rank them in the form of a tier list, which is just going to be like, okay, which civilizations are, need the fewest changes going forward, buffing, nerfing, or tweaking, and which ones need the most. So I have given this a fair amount of thought. So I've actually made the tier list already, and I'm just going to go through and talk about it, all my placements. And I would say that there is a fairly high chance that this is going to need to be a two-part video because there's so much to talk about. But we'll kind of see where we are when we're around halfway through the civs. So just to quickly differentiate between the tiers, because we don't really just get to have like S through F, complete civs are civs that I really don't think need any changes. I think that they are unique, they're powerful, like they have situations where they're weak, they're not like completely overpowered, and I just think that, we're pretty much good to go with them. Minor tweaks, there are going to be a fair amount of civs here, and this is in the realm of like, okay, maybe there's like a little bit of a number issue, like, okay, maybe something isn't quite right. Like one little aspect or like a couple tiny aspects, something in the realm of like a few number changes here and there. But other than that, they're pretty much fine. Something is off is, well, the civ is mostly okay, and if they never received any changes going forward, it would probably be fine. But something just isn't quite right, and something I think it's to the point where I would really like to emphasize getting some sort of change for the civilization just to fix something that is off, because even if the civ mostly works, there's just this, usually like one or two things that are just like really kind of sticking out. Somewhat problematic gets into the realm of I don't have all the answers as to how to fix the civ. And, it would take a few patches, maybe a few changes here and there to really sort of get in exactly what needs to be done. And these are probably the civs that we'll be starting to see a lot of changes going forward in 2021. Major changes needed is like that, but worse. The somewhat problematic civs still overall function as civs in the game. Like you can still see them. They have their situations where they're good, their situations where they're weak, but there's just something about the design that feels very off. This tier is like, the civs aren't necessarily good or bad, but they just feel really unbalanced. Like they're really OP in some situations, they're really weak in others, and just glancing at my list, that's exactly it. The major changes needed civs, all of them that I put in there, are all OP in some situations and just really bad in others. And fundamental redesign, only one poor civ will be relegated to this. The civ in question really just needs something changed from the ground up. So I've already been rambling for 4 minutes, so let's get right into this. We're just going to go through it alphabetically. Aztecs, starting with them. Well, that was easy. Yeah, they're going to be our first civ, and they're, I would say, pretty much complete. If they're, I think, maybe it's a little too early to say. We'll have to see how the nerf to their farmer rate in the anniversary patch, like how that pans out exactly. But just from like my initial tests and just seeing them played, I think they're strong but not overpowered now. And the other thing I wanted to see with Aztecs was their Jaguar Warrior creation speed increased, which we did see. And just in thinking about the Civ, it's very unique feeling. It's great on Arabia and Arena, but is definitely really bad as like a pocket Civ in a team game, and it even leaves a little bit to be desired as like a flank Civ in a team game. and it's not that great on maps like RF or certainly not water maps. It's not really a hybrid map civ. So again, it has situations where it's very strong, situations where it's not very good. It's very gold reliant, but it's not like, Turks where you just feel so sad if you like just get like a gold denied or something. Like Aztecs can make it work. So yeah, definitely it's a classic civ, and it's usually been like, oh, this civ is like so incredibly strong, but it's gotten some hits here and there as far as nerfs go, with the creation speed nerf and the eco bonus nerf now. So I think it's probably fine. Alright, so Dash decided that 7 minutes or so into me recording would be an excellent time to bark to go for a walk, so I just did that, and now I will just be redoing the civ that we will be talking about right now, which is the Berbers. We're going to be going into Something Is Off. Now, don't get me wrong, I really like Berbers. I think that they have a very distinct design, being, the more like light cavalry focused cavalry civ, if that makes sense. They don't have paladins, but they have, cheap cavalry with, still really good upgrades. And then they've got the whole camel archer thing. They've got a really nice navy bonus that makes them interesting on water and hybrid maps. And this is, of course, contrasted with the fact that they don't have much of an eco bonus. So they have a super broad tech tree. They're not the easiest to sort of get your big boom up and rolling. But regardless, I would probably put them, here or here if it wasn't for the Genitor being a team bonus. And in this video, we're talking about all the aspects of a civ. Just because something is not overpowered doesn't mean that it isn't worth changing. And I think that Genitor as a team bonus just isn't that great of a design. I don't really like team bonus unique units, which is like, the Genitor and the Imp Skirm. And the Kondo is, I think, the one exception, but I'll get to that with Italians. But for Genitors, I'm not a big fan of them being a team bonus. In team games, you almost never want to be going for skirmishers anyway. And yeah, Aztec and Mayan and Inca Genitors, haha, they can get cavalry. Like, that joke aside, essentially, Genitors are more of a 1v1 unit, and they are actually really good there. They're actually pretty underused, I think. But I'd rather see something like Casbah, the Castle Age unique tech that makes team castles work faster. I'd like to see that maybe be the team bonus, and then give them another bonus for the Castle Age unique tech. Some sort of change like that. It's not like the biggest of deals, but I think you guys get the idea of like something is off. I'd like to see the Genitor also maybe reworked to be a regional unit to Saracens, Berbers, and Turks. For other reasons that I'll get into later. You'd have to change the name, but the unit itself is fine. And yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of that, but other than that, I think Berbers are, a pretty good, well-rounded civ. They have their strengths. Obviously, like just great cavalry, great mobility, really strong late game, but they are very weak to like Halbram and stuff like that. Britons. They go in minor tweaks. Classic civ. I would be pretty fine if they never needed to change anything going forward with the civ. I think maybe it's a little suspect in team games, where like for team game archer civ, they're just like so strong. Like their team bonus with the faster working ranges might need to be toned down a little bit, but then you break the team bonus trend of like everything producing 20% faster, like Celt Siege Workshops, Hun Stables, Briton ranges, Goth barracks. But at the same time, archery ranges, like it can snowball games a lot early on. And in my opinion, like this is just like a personal thing, but I don't think the Longbowman is an interesting enough design because it's just a straight upgrade from the Archer line. Yeah, they're a little bit less accurate than the Archer line, but other than that, like they are just a better version of the Arbalest with one more. In Castle Age, they just have one more attack, and in Imperial Age, they have one more attack, one more pierce armor, and one more range. But that doesn't make them, like, it doesn't change the profile of units it's good against or units it's bad against. Like, Longbowmen are good and bad against the exact same things as archers, like the Archer line. They're just a little bit better. And units like, say, the Mangudai, yes, they're pretty much a straight-up upgrade of the Heavy Cav Archer, but Mangudai, with their bonus against siege units, actually makes them pretty fundamentally different in terms of like its overall profile of like what it's good against and what it's bad against. Whereas the Longbowman does not do that. Yeah, the unit itself is cool, and nuking stuff from 12 range is pretty fun, but then you remember that Briton arbalests have 11 range, so it's not really that much of a difference. So I don't really know exactly what I would do to the longbowman, but it's certainly not like an overpowered unit or anything like that, and it's not bad. So I think that, maybe for team games, maybe a little nerf to the team bonus and maybe change the longbowman a tiny little bit. But other than that, the unit's fine for longbowmen, and so is Britons. Classic civ. Bulgarians. Gonna be going to somewhat problematic. Definitely somewhat of the forgotten child of the new civs, probably alongside Tatars, but now Tatars are all the rage. Bulgarians struggle from the fact that they don't have that much of an eco bonus, and they don't have crossbowmen. I guess from a design perspective, the Konik is pretty weird, because it loses to paladins and is generally like they're worse than paladins except against halberdiers and I guess camels. But that's kind of what the cataphract does. And yeah, it's like the Konik is like much more well-rounded a unit, but I still think it's maybe a little bit weird. I do think that the rest of the civ is okay. I think I like the new change where they make the blacksmith techs and the siege workshop techs cost less food. I think that's pretty good. And I like that their blacksmiths now work really fast. So like it's a good civ in a lot of situations, but it's still very, very awkward to play. Maybe they should get crossbowmen because like Spanish used to have the identity of being the only civ in the game that to not have crossbowmen. And now Bulgarians have that too, which I think is a little sad, but then you'd probably have to nerf some other parts of the civ. And it's just, I'm not too sure when I want to play Bulgarians. Well, I want to play them all the time because they're fun and they have a great theme. But like, in general, when are you supposed to be playing Bulgarians? Is it a civ you want to play on open maps? Not really. I mean, missing crossbowmen's kind of a big deal there. The Krepos are going to be very helpful in terms of taking map control. And you do have a very strong rush with your free men-at-arm upgrade, but it's just so predictable. Like, it's the one thing Bulgarians do, is they open up men-at-arms and probably towers. And then maybe transition into skirms or something, and go to Castle Age. That's, like, literally, like, all they do. Which I think is definitely a little unfortunate in the diversity aspect of it. They're not going to have the greatest time going for a fast castle, because they don't really have anything to help them get there. At least Spanish have the faster builders. But yeah, there's something a little bit off with Bulgarians, but the civ overall functions fairly well. It's like they're a good civ on closed maps, but lacking gunpowder and like super strong ranged options is a little less than great. But we haven't seen all the changes play out. Maybe they can just get to onagers and SOs like a lot better or something like that. But I think Bulgarians are still a civ that we're going to be seeing more changes for going forward, and I think that's a good thing. I would probably be putting them like down here before the last patch, but I think we're getting there, but we still have ways to go. But they're a new civ, so that's okay. Burmese. Well, yeah, I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. Burmese are the Arambai civ. This civ icon encapsulates the civ perfectly. The rest of it is just like, okay, whatever, it's their unique unit. No, Burmese are the Arambai civ. And yeah, they have a lot of other really good options, but it's just, okay, you just go for like double castle Arambai. It's still really good even after the nerf. And like, yeah, I mean, it's technically a little bit worse, but it's not that big of a deal. And it's really, really uninteractive, especially like if in the team games, especially just because you can sling the guy going double castle Arambai and then the Arambai just kill everything. So that's, I think, a little bit suspect. Yeah, they missed the second archer armor upgrade, but that just means that you're even more shoehorned into going for Arambai because your skirmishers are really, really bad. And it also gives them very polarizing matchups where they're like awful against good archer civs, but then conversely very good against melee heavy civs. So it's just a very unbalanced civilization in terms of it's so polarizing, and I feel like it's way too dominated by the Arambai, and that is not good because the civ has other good options. Like their infantry is very good, the rest of their cavalry is pretty good, their monks are great, their siege is okay, and it's just their archery range is so bad. You just have to go for Arambai so often, and I feel like that's not That's not where we want the civ to be. I think we want to have the civ, do a lot of things that are very powerful, except archers. And I think the Arambai just one, I think it shadows the Conquistador a little too much, but I would like to see it change maybe where they have a lower base attack but higher accuracy. It would make them a little bit more consistent, but not as good as like nuking things. So like if you gave them a base attack of like, I don't know, 12 or something, but then made them like, 65% accurate, something like that. I mean, the numbers, they don't really matter. It's just more the idea. So Burmese definitely need a lot of changes still. So that's definitely one to be looking out for. Byzantines. Go into minor tweaks. I mean, Byzantines, like, again, it's a classic civ. It's pretty much there. There's just like a couple tiny little things. Yes, I'd love to see them get free town patrol as well as town watch, but that's like really not a big deal. And I'd like to see Greek fire. Like, this is really like it. Greek fire makes your fire ships less accurate if you're attacking past 2 range, or 2.49 or whatever. And you shouldn't have a penalty for getting a unique tech. Like, the unique techs, like, across the board just make units better. And it's the same problem with Chattagni for Indians, where because the unit has more range, it then is less accurate at that range. So what it needs to do is Greek fire needs to make the fire ships more accurate at a range so that they have the same accuracy firing at 3 range as all other fire ships have at 2 range. But that's like it. Everything else with Byzantines is like totally fine. It's a classic civ, right? It's like the defensive, jack of all trades, master of none. It doesn't really have many bad matchups, but it has it doesn't have a lot of like super amazing matchups. It's viable on pretty much every map type. And yeah, I mean, Byzantines, they are, always there, always viable, and I think that's fine. Celts will be joining Britons and Byzantines. The civ is probably fine overall, but I'm going to be a little on the safe side. They were just nerfed a bit, where they have their militia no longer having the extra speed in Dark Age. And the civ is, it has its very pronounced strengths, very pronounced weaknesses. Late Castle Age, early Imperial Age, always super rough with the civ, but their late game is super strong, and their early to mid game is also quite good. But their archery range is just so bad, and their stable's also fairly bad, that it can be a pretty awkward civ to play in a lot of situations. And the whole, like, Hoang Rush, Celt Mango Eat TC, ha 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 ha. Like, it's a very annoying thing to play against. Maybe that's just like, there's always going to be something like that in the game, but it's probably fine. I'm just a little too hesitant to put them into complete because there might need to be like a few more tweaks here and there. But again, for the minor tweak civs, if they received no changes going forward, I wouldn't be too unhappy. Like, it's not anything I would like try and like be very decisive, like, hey, I want to push for these changes. So Celts, they're overall probably fine, but could maybe use a little bit of a tweak. Hey guys, Ornlu from the future here. It wasn't until I was actually editing the video that I remembered that, oh, I didn't talk about Stronghold. Yeah, like, one of, if not the biggest reason that I think Celts are not a complete civ is that Stronghold is not a very good unique tech. It will never be part of your actual game plan. It doesn't really help in any significant way, and you only ever pick it up if you just like have some extra resources. So it just feels really underwhelming and kind of out of place with the rest of Celts. So that is definitely something that should probably be changed in some way to be a little bit either more interesting or just have something completely different. But yeah, I don't think anyone would say that Stronghold is a great part of Celts. With that, let's go back and return to the Ornlu of 2 hours ago. Chinese, they will be joining Aztecs in complete. Maybe this is a bit overbold of me, because Chinese are really good, but I do think they have some very pronounced weaknesses. They used to be completely broken on Nomad-style maps and multiple TC start maps, but that has been addressed. Now they're just fairly bad on Nomad, but whatever. I'd rather have a civ be a little on the weaker side than just completely dominating. They're very good on Regicide Fortress, but that's definitely probably where they're at their strongest. But beyond that, I mean, the civ just has like a super good eco, but a very awkward start. It's very vulnerable to being lamed. And it's a tricky civ, especially if you're at the lower levels, but at a higher level, it is really good on most every single map type. Is it too strong? I don't really think so. They have a very, very pronounced weakness to onagers. And yeah, that might not always be an option for your opponent, but I still think that's overall probably fine. They also have a pretty rough time against Eagle Warriors because they lack supplies. So I think now that they miss Redemption and supplies, they're probably fine. I feel more comfortable saying Chinese don't need any changes going forward than any of the minor tweak civs. But maybe I'm wrong in this, but I'm honestly happy with how Chinese are right now. I think that they are, again, it's a very classic civ. It's got tons and tons of identity. Chuko Nu are awesome. They have almost the complete trash tech tree, but they do miss like stuff like guilds in the late game and siege engineers and other techs like that. But yeah, Chinese, not much of an archer civ, but a great, more, a jack of all trades civ. Cumans, yeah, these guys still need some work. Again, it's a new civ, so it's a bit more excusable, but yeah. Cumans, kind of like Burmese, they're the Kipchak civ. They're so pigeonholed into going for one strategy, and that is fast feudal age, 2TC boom, into Kipchaks, into, faster imperial age, and trebbing them down and just snowballing the game that way. And some civs are really well positioned to punish that, and some aren't, and some maps are like, okay, humans can just be screwed, and others it's like, lol, easy. And that's definitely not great. Their eco bonus is like, it's so inconsistently powerful where like sometimes it's just like you're just massively ahead of every other civ in the game, but it's 100% contingent on you going for a very specific thing. It's not a bonus like, most other eco bonuses are useful in like a wide variety of situations or sometimes like every situation. That's not the case with Cumans. So if you do anything other than go for a quick TC in feudal age, you don't get an eco bonus. So that's, I think, a little problematic. And then you also have the problem of Kipchaks, where they're really, really good at just snowballing super hard. But now that they have a frame delay, they just feel like a weaker cav archer, which I guess is kind of the point of the unit. But it feels like just kind of a meh, like a Mangudai knockoff, with just firing a little bit of extra arrows makes them better against siege, but they're kind of, not that exciting in a lot of other ways. And they can be super strong when you're like snowballing them. But if you're like saying opening cavalry and then trying to switch into Kipchaks as like a unit to support your army, then they're looking a lot weaker. So yeah, not the biggest fan of that. Also, their Imperial Age unique tech, human mercenaries, I would just rather see it be something else. Like, yeah, Kipchaks, they did historically, they were mercenaries and whatnot, but if you're already going for Kipchaks, why would you have teammates that need to go for Kipchaks? It just feels really weird and out of place. It's another one of those things that's like, it's not really worth it in the 1v1. You'd rather just make the Kipchaks. And then in a team game, like, what is your other flank is probably going archers if you're on flank. Or if you're pocket, you're not going Kipchaks most of the time. And then if you're, trying to help out your pockets, like, why would they have upgrades for cav archers? Because cav archers need a lot of upgrades to be good. So it's just a really weird tech. There are some things that are cool about the civ. I think that the siege or the rams early is a pretty interesting bonus. I was worried, like at launch, that it'd be super overpowered, but it's, I think, okay, and it can lead to some interesting castle age pushes with Cap Ram. I still think Step Lancers as a unit are a little bit weird, but that's not the fault of Cumans, that's just the fault of Step Lancers. And yeah, definitely, the civ definitely needs some work still. Ethiopians will be joining Berbers in Something Is Off. Again, like Berbers, the civ is mostly there. It's definitely a very good civ. It especially shines as a team game flank civ, or archer civ in a 2v2, it's really the same thing. And, they're pretty strong on open maps, but not top tier. They're pretty strong on closed maps, but not top tier. And to me, the only things that feel a bit weird are their age up bonus. Like, it's an interesting bonus, and I'm fine with it, like, conceptually. The plus 100 food and gold upon reaching the next stage. But I feel like it's kind of weird because resources matter, more or less depending on the time of the game you're in, but you're getting the same bonus every single time. So it feels a bit weird that it's like the plus 100 is super good in feudal age, it's all right in castle age, and it's barely noticeable in imperial age. So maybe I would like change it a little bit. Maybe you could make it like 100 100 for feudal age, 200 for castle age, 300 for imperial age, but that might be overpowered. I mean, it's the bonus is like fine as is, but I'm still a little suspect on it. But the real reason that they're not in like minor tweaks is the Shotel Warrior. I feel like even after it got its cost reduction, it still feels kind of weird as a unit. It's like a panic unit that you can make against ram pushes, or if you're going up against eagle warriors. I'm not a fan of unique techs that singularly buff a unique unit only, you know? Like Royal Heirs, their Castle Age unique tech just makes your Shotel warriors train almost instantly, but it's like, why do I have to get a tech to do that? I mean, it's just not that interesting, right? So I feel like something is definitely a little bit off, especially with the Shotel Warrior. Maybe like minor gripes with the age up bonus, but everything else with the Civ is fine. Oh yeah, their team bonus is also a little meh. Watchtowers and Outpost extra LOS, like it's fairly underwhelming. But you know, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world. Like I said, the Civ, it mostly works. There's just like a few little things that I think are a bit off. In honor of Debbie, and also because I feel it, going into complete, they might even be like the most classic Civ. That's also like the most complete. I don't really think Franks need any changes. They're like the Knight Civ, but again, I think that's okay for there to be a Civ that's like that. And yeah, it makes them just always very good in team game pocket or Cav Civ in a 2v2. Like it's always good in those situations. But again, you're kind of always going to have a civ like that. I don't think that Franks are so far ahead of civs like, you know, Huns or Lithuanians or Khmer or anything like that. But yeah, I think Franks, they're very interesting in that you have not the most broad tech tree. In fact, it's fairly narrow. But because of your eco bonuses just being so generally applicable with your faster foragers and free farm upgrades, that you can choose to play the Civ offensively, you can choose to play it defensively with your cheap castles, and there's just a lot of different ways that you can play the Civ, and they're just good on a lot of different map types and in a lot of different situations. Throwing Axemen are really cool and serve a unique role in the Frankish army. You do have access to some gunpowder, but then you miss stuff like ring archer armor and siege ram and stuff like that. So they're definitely, you know, they have their strengths, they have their weaknesses. They are not very happy at going up against good cav archer civs, and they're not happy going up against good camel civs, especially in team games. And they're not at all good on water. So, you know, they have their weaknesses, they have their strengths, and yeah, Franks are great. Oh yeah, and they're also, along with I think Byzantines and maybe Vikings, probably the most noob-friendly civs. And I would be like Franks, Byzantines, and Vikings would be the civs I would and have recommended to beginners, just because with Franks you can pretty comfortably do the same thing, like over and over again with just a scout opening, and you can just learn how to do build orders from there, and then you have a lot of different options you can go to after that. And yeah, I just think that it's good to have a civ that's like that, especially with Franks being such an iconic civ, like both historically in the Western world as well as, you know, in the game. And, you know, Joan of Arc is the first campaign, and I think that actually is really, really nice. Goths. Yeah, they need some changes. Maybe this is going to be controversial, but I feel that Goth infantry spam is not really good for the game, because Goths, at the high levels, they're just the laming civ, and at lower levels, it's just a really frustrating civ to play against with a lot of civilizations, because you don't have the mechanics to put a ton of pressure on them. And it makes their matchup super polarizing. Like Goths versus a civ like Spanish is like just terrible. But Goths versus Mayans, obviously, the Mayans are still down here, is like, you know, a classic like Goth civ win Omega lol. So yeah, I feel like the Huskarl itself is fine, but the thing is, the Civ lacks much of an eco bonus, and it even got a nerf in the last patch, which is probably for the best. You know, Loom researches instantly. I think that's kind of weird, because it doesn't take any TC time. It just, why not have start with Loom but minus 50 gold? Like, I don't know. I find that kind of weird. And then the fact that you can still just lame with them super easily, and then you also have the cheaper militia that produced faster. Like, it just really encourages a playstyle that is very, very annoying to play against at higher levels, and it's kind of like a one-trick. And I think that maybe some changes to make Goths a little bit more fluid in the early to mid game, maybe do something like give them Thumb Ring. But then in late game, I would in turn nerf Perfusion, because as much as people like their, Goth infantry spam, I mean, they are a fan favorite civ, right? But they're also like hated by people, so it's just a very polarizing civ. I feel like the Goth spam might need a little bit of a tone down in late game in compensation for something more in the early game or mid game especially. But yeah, that's probably not the most popular of ideas, and honestly, I don't think that the devs are ever going to change Goths just because people love the infantry spam, but they really don't like to play against it, and I don't really either, and it just feels like that's just the one thing they do. Huns! Huns are Huns, man. Need to be redesigned now. Huns are great. Huns don't need anything, I think. Oh wait, never mind. I forgot something very relevant. Atheism is silly. Atheism is a silly unique tech. So, very minor tweak. Yeah, definitely feel like I know it's like really minor, but it's just I don't like having a completely useless unique tech. Also, Huns weren't atheists. They just weren't Christians. Like they had their own religion that I believe was somewhat related to the Tengrism of Central and East North Asia. But all that aside, it's useless in like 99.9% of situations, and I just like to see it replaced with something different. It doesn't need to be anything too strong. It could be something like Tarkans can't be converted or something like that. Cavalry can't be converted. I don't know. It doesn't really matter too much to me. Like, and the fact that atheism is like completely useless doesn't hurt Huns really in much of any way. And I think like everything else about the Civ is great. They are like probably the classic Civ for any old school AoE player just because of 1v1 Arabia Hun Wars. Yeah, I really think that Tarkans are really great now. They have a very specific role in the Hunnic army, kind of like throwing Axemen do with Franks, where it's like you don't want to go them in every situation, but they are really great to have in other situations. And that's really cool. They're Cav Archers, like they go for Cav Archers better than most any other Civ in the game, but of course the trade-off is that you miss the last armor upgrade, you have fully upgraded Paladins as an option, and they just have so many different fast options, but they have bad monks, they have really bad siege, although you do have siege ram, and you can build walls, but you don't have houses, and that is usually a fairly important part of walling. So they are definitely very weak on the defensive side, but like they're Huns, right? They're an aggressive civ, and I think that they have a very set identity and role that is really good for the game. All I would really change with that is just like make atheism something else. That's why I actually put them in complete at first, but then I just remembered that atheism was a thing. See, even I forgot about it. Incas. I was hovering between something is off and somewhat problematic, but honestly, I'm going to go with somewhat problematic, because Incas, they're kind of just like, okay, we're going to go for the tower rush. We're either going to go for the Noboru rush, we're going to go for a men-at-arm tower rush, or something like that. Or if you're Rubenstock, you go for a town center drop. But for other people, that's not quite the best idea. And other than that, Incas are a pretty good civ, but they most of the time play like a worse Aztecs or Mayans, which is less than great. Yes, they do have a broader tech tree than either Aztecs or Mayans, but without any major eco bonus to compensate for your lack of stable, they feel a little bit on the generic side. I also think their team bonus is like a joke. Like, it's literally the worst team bonus in the game and has no situation where it's actually like useful. Faster building farms, that is, it's so minor because farms already build super quick that yes, it is like the tiniest increase to your farming efficiency, but it doesn't even really matter. So I think that should probably be replaced. I think that the Civ suffers from, you are somewhat pigeonholed in your design when you're making an American Civ, because you can't give them gunpowder and you can't give them cavalry, and you still need to make them different from Aztecs and Mayans. But I feel like in situations where you aren't going for the tower rush, they feel a little bit on the weaker end. And they're also, I think, because of that, really underwhelming in team games. And they're really like one of, if not like the only civ that is not good in team games and is like just almost strictly better in 1v1s. And I think that's really unfortunate because I feel like every civ should be viable in some situation in 1v1s as well as team games. Like, not in every situation, obviously, but in some relatively common game type or game mode. Like, the civ is overall fine, though. Like, it's still, like, a decent civ. And I do like the more defensive, but defensive civ, but an American civ, obviously. I like that, and I love the idea of, like, the Kamyuks are really cool, the Slingers are really cool, and the whole shifting your tech around based on whatever your opponent is doing. I think that works. I just think that they're otherwise a little too little too generic. They don't feel bad. They just don't feel amazing, or like they don't have anything that's like super defining other than a very all-in and annoying rush. Indians, Indians, Indians. Perfect civ. No. Indians are probably the most poorly designed civ in the entire game right now. And probably have been for a while, but people were just not paying as much attention to it. I have a problem with every single bonus, unique unit / unique tech, except for the cheaper villagers. I think that's fine, and that's like totally legit. And sultans, the castle age unique tech. Like, I have a problem with everything else with the civ. One, the shorefish bonus. It just makes them an instant pick on shorefish maps, but other than that, it's like useless, which is like not a great bonus. Yeah, I know it was nerfed, but you still probably pick them all the time on maps like El Dorado, and of course, Slopes, Indian Mirrors will give me nightmares forever from Hidden Cup. So I think that's not good. I think that the zombie camel pierce armor bonus plus imp camel, and I guess we can throw the team bonus in there. I think all of that is not very good or healthy for the game, or especially not healthy for the civ, because it's just so underwhelming in like every situation except for shorefish maps, which I already talked about, and then team game pocket, where imp camels can just absolutely shred everything. And it can just feel so unfun to play against if you are a paladin civ. They're so strong in such a very specific, narrow situation, but then they're like so weak in like so many other positions. Like, even in 2v2 as a cavalry civ, Indians just struggle so much against good archers. They struggle so much against American civs. Yeah, like, oh, and their Imperial Age unique tech, Shatagni. Like I was talking about with the Byzantine unique tech Greek Fire earlier, it does make their hand cannons less accurate at 8 range, when, at their maximum range, which I really don't like with the unique tech. Like I said earlier, unique techs should, across the board buff a unit. Oh yeah, we didn't even get a chance to talk about the Elephant Archer. Yeah, the Elephant Archer is, it's really not that great, and probably could use a change, big change. I like the idea, I mean, many people have had this idea, but I like the idea of maybe having another archer in the little, what's that called? Isn't that what a chatras is? I don't know. But what the little box on top of the elephant, maybe put another archer in there so they fire 2 arrows. That might make them a little bit more interesting, because right now elephant archers are just worse war wagons. I don't think they're the worst unique unit in the game. That will be coming up in not too long, but they're probably the second worst unique unit in the game. And it's like imp camels are just like, they're either super strong or they're terrible. Or not terrible, but they're really underwhelming. I don't have any super great answers for Indians. I feel like they just need a fundamental redesign. I would probably make them a little bit less of a camel civ, and maybe a bit more of an elephant civ. That would probably make people who care a lot about history a bit happier. But yeah, Indians, I do believe, need a very fundamental overhaul, and they are the only civ I'm putting in fundamental redesign, because like I said, I have problems with everything of theirs except for the cheaper Vil bonus and Sultans. And that's just obviously not very good. Italians, I was thinking about maybe putting them in minor tweaks, but I think that their issues are maybe a little bit deeper than that, so I'm going to put them in something is off. And this is just a civ that is a little too good on water maps and a little too weak on land maps. It's not that anything is necessarily like wrong with the civ. I just feel like on water, they're just maybe like a little bit better than most of the other water civs. and that's not super great. They just have, I think, too many bonuses that work too well together on water maps. I mean, you have the cheaper fishing ships, the cheaper age up, which is super important on water, and you have the cheaper dock tax. Like, all of that just goes together, and yeah, I think that's a little over the top. But on land maps, they just don't really have enough going for them, and they just feel really generic. Like, they have a good tech tree, but all you have really for a land bonus until you get, to like post imp, and you can get your cheaper gunpowder units, is just cheaper age up, which is like, yeah, it's nice, but it's not that great. There really aren't a ton of land maps where you're ever going to see the civ shine, and you don't want a civ that's only good on water maps. However, they're not awful on land maps, and you just probably need to nerf, like, maybe their cheaper dock text could probably be a little bit nerfed, and then maybe give them some other small boost on land. I think condos are fine. Because condottiero are literally mercenaries, I think that it totally works as a team unique unit. Also, it is a gold unit, so it is something you would actually see in team games. Like landing and then spamming a bunch of condos. Like, I think it does make sense thematically that, they're an expensive unit, but they're fast, you can get them out quickly, and they're going to be pretty decent. I think all of that is actually totally fine, and now that they have the changes where they're a little bit stronger, I think they're probably fine. It is kind of weird that they have a bonus against gunpowder that feels a little bit random, but, it gives them a little bit more of a niche, so that's probably fine. So yeah, just really, I think, a little bit weaker on water, a little bit stronger on land. Japanese are almost complete, but I'm gonna put them in minor tweaks because there is something I would like to see changed, like for sure, and that is the samurai cost. I think is a little too high. I'm glad supplies was added to the game. I think it does add a lot more to the game, especially compared to tracking, which was just kind of stupid. I like samurai, and I think that they're fine, like conceptually. I just think that you have samurai, which costs 60 food and 30 gold, and then you have champions with supplies that cost 45 food and 20 gold. So 15 less food and 10 less gold. So samurai are like a fair bit more expensive compared to champions. So all I would do is just reduce the cost of samurai by 15 food, just to like even out the fact that Japanese obviously have supplies. You could make it something like samurai are affected by supplies. It just feels a lot weirder and like more awkward than just making the samurai cost less food. Because samurai, yeah, they are better than champions in most scenarios, and the bonus versus other unique units is cool with the whole samurai, going out and trying to seek the strongest opponent and all that stuff. But I just feel like they're a little too expensive compared to champions now. The only other thing is maybe I would extend their team bonus to be like all warships plus, extra line of sight. I think it's a little weird that it's only galleys. And I think it would be a nice little bit of a bonus, especially for like fire ships, to see demo ships incoming a bit better. If maybe you can nerf the team bonus a little bit, but then have it affect all warships. I think that would be a nice little change and make the bonus, I think, a little bit more interesting. But these are like, no, they're minor tweaks, right? The Civ, if it received no changes, would still be pretty good. It definitely has its situations where it's strong, and it has its situations where it's weak, and I definitely am a fan of the Civ, just a few little things. And our last Civ of this part 1, because yes, I decided that this is going to be a two-parter because, oh boy, this is already getting quite long. But it's going to be Khmer, and they're going to be going into somewhat problematic. Yeah, I feel like before the patch where they were nerfed, they're probably down here, but maybe they're only up here after they got the farming rate nerf and the battle elephant nerf. There's just a lot of things that are a little weird with Khmer. I feel like their Hussar spam in late game was just like so insanely strong, and I'm not the biggest fan of the farmer bonus like not needing to drop off, because really all it amounts to is the same thing as the Slav farm bonus, except a little bit different. Like it amounts to farmers work faster. Food comes in faster, and like the fact that it always trickles up as opposed to coming in like bursts is like that's another benefit of it. But I feel like it's otherwise not like it's nothing to write home about in terms of uniqueness. Yeah, the elephants were just so overpowered in team games, partially because of the fact that they had elephants. And elephants were super OP in team games, but were still like pretty underwhelming in a lot of cases in 1v1s. And I'm glad that they nerfed the speed bonus of elephants. Like that I think was exactly important, but it's still probably like elephants that are faster remove like one of the key weaknesses of elephants, which is that they're slow. And the fact that battle elephants are already fairly fast, that you essentially get what is it, 20% faster than 0.85, so that's, I don't know, it's some number. I can't do the math in my head, I'm sorry. With husbandry plus the speed bonus, yeah, not the biggest fan of that. And the sort of the pièce de résistance is the ballista elephant. That is the worst unique unit in the game, like hands down. Its only utility is utility. It cutting down trees in Castle Age, with the scorpion bolts. That's it. The unit stats could be literally anything. Yeah, it would be like overpowered if it had like a super high attack or something like that. But like the stats don't matter. It's just you can cut trees with them, and that's the only situation you ever want to go for them in any competitive game. They're also like really strong in like Diplo games, free for alls, but I don't care about that. The unit it's just like a silly unit, right? It's a scorpion on an elephant. Maybe some people think that's super cool, but I don't know. I just feel like it's kind of silly. You just you otherwise never want to make them. Elephant archers at least serve as like a really great unit against archers, but ballista elephants, they don't have the range of elephant archers, and yeah, they'll be doing a little bit more damage, but they also have a lot less pierce armor, so they're worse against strong archers, and they're so expensive and slow to get up and running. Yeah, I remember one of the KOTD games, Mr. Yo went for ballista elephants when he was ahead, and then lost because ballista elephants are awful. So, not a fan of that. Not too big a fan of where Khmer are at. However, the reason that they're not down here is I think that the buffs they received, or the nerfs they received recently, rather, were pretty spot on in terms of what they needed. And they are, if you want to have the elephant civ, I think that Khmer being that civ is okay. I think that, the elephants are, they're pretty unique units, even though they're not unique units. You know what I mean? And I like the fact that they do have a food-based eco bonus, because that's what you need if you're going for a lot of elephants. I just think it was a little too strong. Now it might be better, but I did some testing, and it seems like the farms still work like way faster, especially after wheelbarrow. So yeah, Khmer, a little problematic. They're actually, I think, fairly balanced for 1v1 Arabia now, but I think team games especially, not the biggest fan. Anyway, everybody, that is going to be it for this first part of the State of the Civilizations video. I will be having the next part come out tomorrow, which is just going to be the second half of the civilizations. It's the reason I stopped right now is because we're halfway through all of the civs now. And you can see that we actually have a fairly even spread across the board. I didn't plan for that exactly, but overall, civs that are like at least around here, I'm like overall happy with how they are in the game. And it's really just these civs and below, I guess, that are not really going to be quite there. So definitely stay tuned. Once the second part comes out, I will link it in the description. So definitely check out that, and I will see you guys next time.